Hey, everybody, it is Richard Harris here. Scott Leese is out today, but we've got a great guest on the Surf and Sales podcast today. So thank you for joining us, Justin J. Johnson. We're going to talk about the Triple J's in a minute, but first I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Hubspot. It is an amazing time for them and for you, particularly as sales leaders. We know the expectations are high. I actually just wrote the other day about, does anybody know how to do less with more and be successful? Well, something like HubSpot can actually help you do that. And it does a whole lot more than closing deals and cold calls and all that kind of stuff. With everything we have to leverage as humans and technology, we do need it all in one place. So there is a new HubSpot Sales Hub, unifies your data, tools, and team inside a smart and powerful platform. Boy, that was written by marketing. There's a new prospecting workspace, deal management tools, and AI-powered tools to help reps optimize based off real-time results. So, by the way, as a rep, for those of you who are reps listening, it can automate your busy work so you can focus on the important stuff. So please check out HubSpot.com. We appreciate it. Thank you so much, HubSpot, for sponsoring Surf and Sales. Without further ado, Mr. Justin J. Johnson, welcome to the show, buddy. Sorry Scott can't be here to join us.
All good. Thanks for the invite. Scott's probably out surfing or something, so no worries.
Oh, he would never do that without me. He would never. Actually, he would. In fact, I think he is next week. All right, first question. Justin J. Johnson, right? The three names.
Yeah.
First question. Did your parents do the JJJ on purpose? Is it a band? Like, I know people with family trends like this, right? Like we have one in our both of our kids' middle names are after American authors. Is there any story there? Or is it just like, I don't know, it's just what they did?
Well, a story. There is a trend with the J's in my family.
Okay.
My dad wanted to name me Jay. My mom was hoping for a girl, and I obviously didn't turn out as one. And if it was a girl, she wanted to name her Justine or Justina.
Okay, I was going to say that makes sense.
So it landed at Justin J. Johnson. So.
Got it. And did they? What are your parents calling you? Justin J. What is your mom call you Justin and your dad calls you Jay?
It's Justin unless I'm in trouble. Still a friend. They'll throw the middle name in there.
Which leads me to my next question is why? And I don't care that you promote as Justin J. Johnson. Is it just branding and it's easier and it's the three J's, or you just because I would be like the same thing, Richard Lowell Harris Jr., you're in trouble. So why? It's just a brand thing.
Well, it's interesting because when I was in college, when people learned my name, they just started calling me Triple J.
Okay.
And what everyone would call me. So then that kind of stuck with me. Mm-hmm. And then professional world, people call me Triple J and Justin J.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this is it. So,
gotcha. Yeah, it's always interesting, and I know you've done this before. Your bout of entrepreneurship. So, which is what I want to talk about, because it does work as a brand, right? Like you and I have known each other from LinkedIn for years, and we've gotten to know each other over the years and lots of places and stuff. So, let's dive in. So you recently, last 6 months, gone out on your own, right? You cut the cord.
Like the plunge, my man. I did it.
And what led to it? If it was a situation where you kind of had to leave, we don't need to disparage anybody, but just sort of like, what was it? You were done, you were tired, it was the economy, I got laid off. So I figured, what the fuck? Like, what was it?
So for me, my passion has always been helping people. And that's why I got into leadership in the first place. That's why I had so much fun. And I had a great ride at the place that I went. But I always felt that when a leadership position at a company, somewhere you're constrained on what you can coach on. And, and this is something that it's a itch I've wanted to scratch for a long time. I went to a tiny micro conference down in Costa Rica. I don't know, I can't guess the name of it.
Yes. I think it's called Sales and Surf or
something like that.
Sales and Surf with some cool people.
Yeah, I'm a guy with like a really scraggly beard, looks a little homeless, was one of the people that ran some other ball.
He has the hobo chic look going, right?
Yeah. Yes. So I, from just going to that experience and just talking to other people that were already doing this.
So let's dig in there for a minute. And because I think, I don't mind self-promoting. And I think this is an important piece because we go to conferences, right? Like when this drops next week, Dreamforce is kicking off. And there's a big difference between a big conference and a little conference, right?
Yeah.
If you think back to when you were having conversations at Surf and Sales, were there one or two moments where it was just like, that's it. That's what made me get it, or said, or pushed you further. Not that was the moment you decided to do it, but it was like, what resonated? Sorry, I'm asking 4 questions at once.
No, I remember the exact moment because I always had this entrepreneurial spirit in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to try to build a business, but I didn't want to just start a business just to start one. That'd be something that I was passionate about. And the exact moment I was actually surfing with Scott, we're sitting in the water and we were waiting for a wave to come. And I was asking him questions, because his journey is, pretty wild and then what he's accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, when did you know? Like that was really I'm like, when did you know? And that's all I said. And he knew when I was asking. And then he told me when he knew. And then I told him a little bit of my story. Like that's when I was like.
So what was, if you remember, he won't mind us talking about it because I'm pretty sure I know what it is, but what was his moment? What was his epiphany?
For him, it was, he was killing himself for his company. And at the end of the day, what he told me was, what the owners or founders of the companies primarily cared about is them making money, and they weren't fully buying into everyone. And it was just a giant game.
Yep.
And that was when he kind of made the decision in his own mind of like, okay, I need to start to think about how I, learn the rules of this game to exit. And that's, there's a lot of amazing things that come from working at companies. I owe my career to working at incredible companies.
Yeah.
But it's still a game, right? And you got to know the rules of the game. You got to know how to play it.
Yeah.
Most importantly, you got to know if the game's for you.
Yeah. You got to know if the game is for you. I think that's a really great way to put it. And I know that journey of Scott. So I was curious. So you take this piece of information, right? Like here's, someone we know, love, and respect. And people do this all the time. Like you've said things that stick with me, and I've said things that stick with you, and it happens all over the place. What was the first step of action you took after that resonated? Well, right? Because it's one thing to hear it and agree with it and sort of go, oh, that sounds like me, which is what we all need, right? That kick in the pants, so to speak. What made you decide to take action on it? When did that moment occur for you?
That moment occurred when I was on that surfboard. It was the same moment.
Yeah, but what was the first action you did? So you decided in that moment, okay, I'm going to go do this. You didn't leave Costa Rica and quit your job. Like you didn't, right?
Yeah. So the first thing that I did was I reached out to my network and shared my intentions of what I'm doing. Because one thing I know about setting in my career is like, once you make it publicly known, then you have skin in the game. So I wanted to tell people, my friends, my family that were close to me, like, hey, this is my intentions. And so that was like step one. It's like really put it out there. And two was, threw feelers out of people that, were looking for guidance, coaching, consulting, whatever it was. And, learning how to do it on the fly while also, simultaneously work to, build my brand, on, social media. And, I didn't know exactly like when I was going to say, all right, let's do this all in. But I now had a clear understanding of like the destination for me.
Mm-hmm.
The destination I had for me early in my career is I wanted to be a CRO of, $100 million plus sales organization. Like that was my North Star that I ran at. And it was a beautiful North Star because it carried me and it helped me stay focused on the things to, grow and develop through my career. But North Stars change, right? And for me, I was starting to realize that, I think there's something bigger for me out there where I can help a lot more people than just one company of people that I work with.
So this is great because I think this is what people think about all the time, right? Okay, so first you have this conversation that kind of goes, okay, I get it. Then you start to take the action to put that in plan. And then there was the point you said, well, I didn't say at that moment that I was going to go all in. What was the moment you decided to go all in, right? Like you're taking this step by step, and I think this is what everybody does. What happened and when did you decide to go, I'm all in? And I don't mean emotionally all in. I mean, there is the only income you have is your income.
So when I went, the path leading up to it, earlier this year, I started writing my book, Zero to Club. It's going to come out later this year with some awesome contributors in it. Shameless plug, Richards, you're going to be on there.
Thanks.
Thank you for being a part of it, as is Scott. And I started writing that book because that was going to be a part of me helping to just get back to the community there. But it wasn't until just a couple months ago that I went all in, took the plunge, and cut the cord from the deck.
But what led to it? What was it? You had enough side clients? Was it again a lot of here they're doing their side hustles into real, like, what was that moment?
I did not have this. I did not follow the journey that you hear on LinkedIn when they say, oh, get to 30, 40, 50% of your income, then go all in.
Right.
I had like jack, right? I was messing around. And that was part of the reason why I said I need to go all in, because the way I operate with my W-2 is like, I go all in. That's how I'm able to do what I do at a high level. So because of that, I had little to no energy to dedicate to this passion project. Right. And then once I started having a hard conversation with myself, I said, look, what do you really want to do? Right. You don't want to look back and say, what if? So why not do this now?
Mm-hmm.
Worst case scenario, give it a year. You hate it, you can always go back.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's part of my decision-making, like matrix. I always go worst case scenario. What's worst case scenario?
Yep. I think that's fair. What kind of personal support do you have around you?
My wife is amazing. I couldn't do this without my wife.
That's a key piece. Do y'all have kids yet? I don't know that.
We do not. We have dogs, which I fully agree, are not as much work as kids, but I feel like they're my kids.
Yeah. So I want to, I always love these personal stories, right? Like, so your wife, it's not like you sprung this on her, right? She knows what you've been doing. She's paying attention. But at some point as a couple, you have to have the conversation. Okay, my income's going away for a little bit, right? And that was, again, as my psychologist once told me in therapy, he's like, the best thing about finding the right partner is, do they always have your back, right? And it sounds like your wife always has your back and you always have hers. How did y'all walk through that? Because I think that's, the income piece is a big fear, right? And it's different if you're single. It's different if you're with a partner. It's different if you're partnered with kids. It's different if you're single with kids, right? Like there's different levels of responsibility. So for y'all, how did that conversation go? Was it an easy conversation?
It was pretty easy. And the reason why is because we've been working to structure our finances in a specific way since we became a couple.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I've always done is, subscribe to the idea of ignorance is not bliss when it comes to two things, your money and your body, right? So you got to learn how money works and you got to learn how your body works. Mm-hmm. So with the money part, one of the things we've always worked towards, and we weren't always there until recently we went all in with this mindset of getting to a point where we can live off of only one income. And then the other person's income gives us freedom to do whatever we want, investing, all these things, because, what everyone wants is freedom, right? Yeah. To do what you want, when you want, where you want, to you. Yeah. And that's going to happen if your expenses, are just below our income. So we've been working towards that. But I would say anyone who may not have a spouse, that you can do this, or you're less on your income, could you move in with your parents for a year I'm sure they'd take you in, right? In most cases, like what can you do for a year to cut your expenses down as much as humanly possible to sacrifice, right? And that's what we did. We cut out a lot of spending. We still do as I build a business. But it wasn't a very difficult decision once we walked through the numbers of it. So it's been great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Kudos to your wife. I'd love to have her here and ask her what's it like to be married to Triple J.
See, that's going to be a different equation where she's like, oh, let me tell you about Chuck.
I know. That's the equation I want. So I want to know that math equation. So digging in a little bit more, seriously, that's not always easy to do. I loved your part about understanding your finances, and I'm in the same boat. I've done a ton of stuff in stocks. My wife has done stuff in real estate, and look, I'm not a financial advisor, so don't take my advice. One of the things I've learned that I missed out on, that I've learned from my wife and father-in-law, is that it's good that I've had stuff in stocks. My income's increased, but it's all in places I can't really use it, right? As opposed to real estate, where you start small and you can start to get some income. Even though you're investing out, you get some monthly income coming in, right? And then over time that grows, and then you sell the property, all that kind of stuff. So that's the one mistake I made, which was doing everything in stocks. But I've done well. I just don't access the money, right? As opposed to real estate, where you don't necessarily access the money, but you have income coming in every month. So that's a big plus for people, your point, who, as you said, you got to learn about your finances. You got to learn about your body and your health and all that stuff.
And if you just allocate like a percentage of your income, and that's what got me early. They said, look, and this is what they told me when I was broke and I didn't have any money to invest.
Yeah.
You got to make it hurt now.
Yes.
And what that was, it doesn't matter if you're investing, $10 a month, or you're building the habit of investing a percentage of your income.
Yep.
Right. And so we've been disciplined where I always try to get about 20 to 20% of our income, invest in capacity, and then as your income grows, you keep the same percent. Right? But you're just
I did. It's interesting too. Like I think and you hear about it all the time that if your company does have a 401k, right? First piece of advice is do what you can. Try to max so you get the same match every year. If you can't, do what you can, because you actually don't feel like you're losing the money. It's being taken out and shifted through, right? Like, so I was a big fan of that. I'm also, I don't know, have you done Acorns yet? I know we're shifting.
I tested out Acorns a little bit. First came out, I played with it a little bit.
So I do it. And so like my debit card, like when I go down to the store, like it rounds everything up to the next dollar. I think I've saved in 4 or 5 years, I think I've saved like $5,000 that I never even knew I missed. And then you can invest it in their little mutual funds and stuff. So it's like, it's just funny. It's like, and then you can access it. So it's like, oh, all right, well, that becomes my vacation fund after 5 years, or that becomes, or I take it and put it in something else that I can invest in. Whatever. But there's lots of little ways to save, right?
That's the thing. Like it's people think about investing or making a big change, and they see this massive thing. But if you just chunk it down to, hey, if I just round up every transaction, that's doing it, right? $1 a day adds up, right? It's like, you think micro decisions, and then they compound and stack.
Yeah.
But they're like this massive thing.
Right. So it's anyway, so I'm glad we brought this up, and I'm glad, again, congrats on being able to cut the cord, and not everybody in the situation you are. And so I love the advice. So, going back to your folks, granted, I was once at home with my mom and my sister, and my sister looked at my mom and said, Mom, I love you and I love visiting, but I don't know if I could ever live with you again. And of course, without missing a beat, my mom said, well, no one's asked you to move in. So anyway, but that's our family. So I think the younger generation is a stronger connection. Want to shift a little bit, right? I don't know this whole story. We were chatting a little bit before online, and you were saying you've had 30 surgeries in your life. So adversity is, whether this company fails, this is not a major adversity to you, it sounds like, right?
No. Yeah. So,
so again, help people understand a little bit, tell whatever you're comfortable telling, and how that's affected you in your drive and passion.
yeah. So I didn't even tell you this, but I actually almost died twice, not just once. So I was at birth, I was the first ever ECMO baby at Children's Memorial in Chicago.
The first one?
First ever ECMO baby at Children's Memorial in Chicago. ECMO stands for extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, which essentially means your heart and lungs they're using like machines to operate as your heart and lungs. Wow. So obviously I was a baby, so I don't really remember that.
Right.
But, when I was 10 years old, I got into a snowmobile accident, January 16, 2000. And 10 years old, I'm riding with my cousin. And then out of nowhere, lights went out. And before I know it, I'm all out of it. My cousin rushes me back to the house, runs to get my family. And, I'm losing consciousness. I'm coughing up blood everywhere, because when I was riding that snowmobile, I got clotheslined by a car about 15 miles an hour. And, they rushed me to the hospital. They acted fast. The county hospital, they didn't have what I needed to keep me alive. They just bought some time. They brought me to a larger hospital, which saved my life. Went to Madison. And that was one of the best days of my life, because it crushed my larynx, it crushed my esophagus, it crushed my trachea, crushed my vocal cords. So I couldn't eat for a year. They told me I'd never talk again. So I started learning sign language as a 10-year-old that night in the hospital. My vocal cords still don't work. My voice comes from scar tissue. I had a trach for 2 years. So I had to breathe out of a tube on my throat for 2 years. And then dozens of surgeries later to get me back. And it was obviously brutal going through. But in hindsight, and going back to what I'm going through now, if you've been through hell and back, this is a cakewalk. So that's why I consider it one of the best days of my life, because I had, you only have one shot at the thing called life. And I was blessed to be reminded of that at a very young age, where most people don't realize that, truly internalize that until later in their life. So, and that's been a big part of what fuels me every day, just trying to make the most of every single day.
When do you think you made the epiphany that it was the best day of your life? I went through this too, with my depression, right? After some time and perspective, it kind of became, it became, my superpower, right? And when was were you always that resilient as a kid? I woke up that day and I was like, fuck it, I'm not going to let this get me down, or take some time.
It took time. It wasn't until the lights didn't come on for it till about 15 years later.
Right.
As a kid, after going through that, one of the things that I gained from that I believe is a superpower is my ability to observe what's going on around me and just, be very aware, because I was forced to observe. I had to go on the sidelines. I had to sit in the hospital while everyone was out and about. When other kids were out at recess, I couldn't do that. And so I was forced to observe. So help me learn that skill, which I didn't realize was a skill till later. But it wasn't until, I was probably mid-20s when I started to realize, because my work ethic was very high and I was doing very well. It wasn't until then that it clicked for me, where that really came from. Because candidly, after my accident, I became pretty entitled and spoiled because I was the baby of my family. I was the young. And imagine the youngest going through this tragic accident, so everyone's catering to me. So then I became entitled and spoiled. And then I had some people very close to me, and specifically my grandfather, that literally blue-collar, hard-nosed guy, construction, broke me like a wild horse. He's like, I don't care if you hate me, you're not going to be lazy. I just will not have that in my life.
Right.
And
I wish Scott were here to defend himself, because I've said the same thing to him. That, but it's that's nobody's fault. That's just what happens to people, right? Particularly when it happens at that age. You figure out how to get people to help you do things, and it becomes too easy to do. So I always get about it, but kudos to your grandfather for sort of whipping you back into shape. Gonna take a quick break, and then gotta give out our next. Oh snap! Something went wrong on the display. Got to do our next little ad for HubSpot. When we come back, I'll give you the mic and let you ask some questions, as we always like to do, and we will go from there. And I'm pausing because this stupid thing won't reload. Welcome to Google. Welcome to the world of Google Docs and screen sharing. Oh, for fuck's sake.
So are we off air then right now?
No, we're on air. It says I have no memory. Anyway, well, I'll have to go back and put it in, which is not what I normally like to do. But that's what I'll have to do. So, Justin, coming back to you. Questions you want to ask. What do you got? What do you got for me?
I mean, really, you've been in the game a long time, right? When did you know?
I got fired. No, it was that's the funny joke. The serious joke was I was working at a great company. I got laid off. They hugged me out the door. They really did do a nice job, which I thought was really appreciative. Not thought was appreciative. I was very appreciative of it. So that happened. And, I was interviewing around, and I seemed to get past like the fourth interview. I couldn't figure it out. And finally, some guy called me out of the blue, out of Austin, who I'd spoken with the year before, asked me if I could do some help. I said, yeah. And, he was trying to hire me. I'm like, you're not going to hire me, but, I can be a consultant. I threw it out, and I threw out this silly number of how much I thought, he should pay me. And he's like, okay. So I had a client. The next thing I know, I'm flying back on the plane and sit down next to this other guy who's on the plane, and he's in suede shoes and a jeans and a blazer. And I'm like, that dude's a startup guy. Nobody leaves Austin, Texas on a Friday just like this. And so we started talking, and turns out it was Nick Mehta from Gainsight. We had this amazing conversation, so much so that we got shushed by the flight attendant a couple of times, even though there was no booze, there was no drinking. We were just having a good time. Next thing I know, I had another client for 30 days. So I had 60-day clients. I'm making 6 months salary. Pick up the phone. I called John Barrows, who's a really good friend of mine. Said, what do you think? He's like, it doesn't happen this way, Richard. This isn't how it works. So the world might be telling you something, so go for it. And that's what I did. So to that point, that conversation with John was my conversation, with that you had with Scott in the water, right? And like you, I'm wired the same way. I've always liked helping people. I've always liked being in management to help others. I was a good salesperson. I was never the greatest, right? Never made it to President's Club, but I hit my numbers. And but I liked helping, I liked managing. And so that was a big difference for me in that piece, and where I think we both sort of match. Come up with another question, and I'm going to read my next HubSpot thing. So for this one, I want to give a shout out to the Hubspot Podcasting Network and a very, very good friend of mine, Donald Kelly. If you don't know Donald, please follow him on LinkedIn. Gives some great advice. He also has a podcast called The Sales Evangelist. And each week he interviews some of the best sales experts, sellers, sales leaders. He's talked to people like Gittimer and Jill Conrath and Bob Berg and Guy Kawasaki. I need him to book my podcast. Holy shit. But he's the guy who just gives great advice, tons of great advice about building a pipeline, growing your pipeline. I've talked to him a couple of times this year, 2023, and what his stuff is, what he's recommending to people to grow pipeline. So please be sure to check out the Sales Evangelist podcast on the HubSpot Podcast Network. All right, coming back to you, Mr. Johnson, the triple threat.
Yeah,
you're like Triple H, except you're Triple J. So
not near as jacked as Triple H. So
all right, we can get you some more steroids.
What year was that flight with Nick for you?
It was 10 or 11 years ago. Yeah, it was 2012. So 13. Yeah. So
You've been in a decade, right?
Yeah. So, and the funny thing is he negotiated. He's like, well, can we negotiate it down? And if I'd have been smart, I'd said, yeah, give me options. But I was an idiot. So I didn't,
But at that point, you're just trying to pay the bills, right? You're not.
Right. That's true. I was just trying to pay the bills. So what else? What else do you want to ask? Anything?
I mean, I want to know, if you're talking to Richard from a decade ago, who's just getting rolling, what advice are you giving to him based on all your bumps and bruises from the last decade?
Yeah, I think one would have been sooner than I did expand my services. I specifically didn't focus a lot on sales ops in the beginning. I think that was a mistake because I could have built a second arm of the business. Which I now have, and I do go-to-market strategy and all that stuff, right? But I specifically didn't do that. Like, it was intentional. I don't want to do that. This is what I know. I'm going to stay focused on it. It's easy. It's a nice lifestyle business. I'm making good money, blah, 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 right? So that would be the one thing. I would also say that's a common theme in my head anyway, that no, don't make it any harder on yourself. And that has long-term compounding impacts. Look, and I was fine. Like, financially, I was fine. I was still making good money as this, but for making those decisions, there were the compounding interest in a negative way that, well, if I'd have expanded it, what could I have done? What could I have grown to and stuff like that? And that's a common theme throughout my life, where it's like, I'll put forth this much effort. But at this stage of my life, at 40, whatever, when this was happening, I was like, I just don't want to run like I was 20 something anymore. Right. That was part of the reason I went into this, was I was tired and I was burnt. And so I think I hurt myself there. So that'd probably be my first thing. Is the other thing I would say also came from Sturfin Sales. One of our second or third ones, and Scott Barker was there. And, he made this very simple statement, which was just say yes to more things, right? So when people, which I've always been opposed to, right? Like, hey, Richard, can we help this? Can I pick your brain? And I was just a little bit like negative, like it's part of the Gen X generation, but like, fuck you, I figured it out, go figure it out yourself. And that was a very big one. That one I actually followed, which was, I'm going to start saying yes to more things. I think that was the beginning of me starting to open my ideas around additional things that I could offer to clients and stuff like that. So, but that was a simple one. Just say yes to everything, because you can say no later. So, yeah, but that's the basics.
I mean, thinking about that, because what about you? I hear, hey, if you want to do big things, you got to stay focused, right? But when you say yes, trying to diversify earlier, do multiple things, it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You're hearing from people, you've heard from people, and you say yourself in your experience, I wish I would have diversified and maybe had a little. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah,
I'm hearing it.
Yeah, I think the key for me, what I took away from Barker when he said it, was say yes to the conversation. Right? Because nothing bad happens in a conversation. Right? And that's the part that started to open the door. It didn't mean, yes, I'm going to go do this piece. It meant, yes, I'm going to entertain the idea. The other thing I would coming back to your original question, was I would have gotten a coach sooner, way sooner, but I was too stubborn and Gen X-y about it. When COVID hit, I picked up the phone and called a guy, Alan Tarkowski. If you don't know Alan, really smart guy, built enterprise global teams kind of stuff. And he coached me on building my business and rebuilding it based on the COVID model. And so he's been a very strong supporter and help behind the system. So I think I would have done that sooner, but I never wanted to. Like, my ego couldn't handle it, which is probably a lot of the reasons for these other things. My ego couldn't handle the advice, or my ego didn't want to admit that I built my business this way and that maybe there's another way. Like I always need a person that's kind of kick me in the ass. Barrows, Leese, Allen, that kind of stuff. So, so that's it. What else? Or
Well, I just want to add, one of the things that has helped me through my entire career is having a coach, investing in a coach.
Yep.
Going back to what we were talking about earlier with your finances, one of the things that I like to think about is if I can allocate, just 5% of my income on an annual basis towards self-development in some capacity.
Yeah.
The upside of what you're going to learn is incredible. You think about, and it only takes one little thing. You go to Surf and Sales, go to Costa Rica.
Right.
I learned an incredible amount of things. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And believe me,
changed my life.
And it's funny because I bet if we sat down, you could come up with 10 other conversations just like that. I said, Justin, tell me about another conversation where you learned something in a quick moment. Right. And we have this conversation with alumni people. And we got a cut, so I can't ask you that question, but it's there, right? Like, you probably already have 3 in your head. So for people who've never been, this is why people come to Surf and Sales and why they come back and why we're having our alumni event this year. And we still have a couple of spots for Surf and Sales in November this year. So please check it out at surfandsales.com. Justin, tell people what you do and then how they can get a hold of you. We've been talking about your business, but we haven't talked about your business.
So I'm the founder and creator of the beautiful Savage Sales Academy, which is, a 12-month program that can take you from 0 to 100. And what I focus on, which I think makes me unique, is I teach people the 3 C's. And it's master your conscience, master your craft, and master your career. Because if you're going to succeed, because my goal isn't just to help you make more money commission. That's the easy part. I can teach you the skills, all that good stuff. But if you're going to win at this game called life and leverage sales as your vehicle, you have to think about the 3 C's of the tripod. Because you can be a killer seller, but if you don't know how to play the game in the corporate game, you're screwed, right? You can play the corporate game, but you don't know how to sell, you're screwed, right? And you have to keep your head on straight and master your mindset in the process. So you actually enjoy yourself along the way. And so that's what I teach people to do in the academy. And then I consult with tech companies around how to help them run and build high performance sales organizations. And that's what I do.
Cool. How can people find you?
JustinJJohnson.com. But I want to call out that middle J is spelled out Jay.
Yeah.
It's my full name. But of course you can find me on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Absolutely, man. Glad to have you. Thank you for sharing all this personal, professional journey. Like, you really built yourself an amazing life, career, capacity, company. So congratulations to all the success. And
before you wrap up, I gotta say this. I was blown away by our conversation a few weeks ago. For folks that don't know you, as I'm just learning to start the business, not knowing which way to go in any direction, I reached out, to Richard, and I just said, "Hey, can I just pick your brain?" Like the most terrible way to approach someone. Like, can I just pick your brain? And they tell you how to do that. Not to do that every time, but I had no value to give to him. I'm like, please let me learn. And you were gracious enough to jump on a meeting with me. And I don't even know how many questions I asked you. It was a lot, but you were just like, here's everything. You weren't holding anything back, and it was really, when I've had those interactions, I've had a couple of them now with different coaches, consultants, it blows me away, like this community of how much everyone just wants each other to succeed.
Yeah.
You made not my day, not my week, you made my month by just being a great human being. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Actually, I forgot to ask you one question, so we're not done yet.
Okay. All right.
For the people who stick around, the biggest hurdle I see, and I'm curious if you think you're running into it. You go and you start this business, right? And people go from side hustle to main gig. And then about 3 to 6 months later, they hit a wall. So their first couple of customers are people they know, right? They're friends and family. They're, just companies they know, people they know, et cetera, et cetera. What are you going to do when you hit that wall? That's all. I see people leave.
Keep going. I mean, it's coming to like number one's having the systems.
Yeah.
Right. Take the systems so you can celebrate the small victories along the way, control your inputs drive output. Right. But like on a psychological level, it's like mastering your conscience comes into play.
Right.
When I get faced in those moments, because I get faced with those every day. Right. What I tell myself, this quote, it's actually, I have it behind me on the wall. Everybody wants to be a beast until it's time to do a beast deal.
Well said. Wow, that's good. Right. I think Clinton said, you don't get to make peace with your friends. Right. That's a really well thought out thought. I appreciate that one. Yeah, I'm glad I got a chance to ask that. That'll be the interesting thing when the shakeout occurs, right? The shakeout comes, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 3 months. So I certainly wish you all the opportunity to get past that point. Like I hope it, I'll always take your call and answer questions. And, for those who don't know, Justin's pretty much a direct competitor. So, we haven't run into each other yet on stuff, but it'll happen, and this is what it's like to be friends. Like there's no frenemy bullshit. I hate that phrase. We're friends, and we both want to see each other be successful, and there's a lot of business out there. So I keep wishing you well on your journey.
You too, my man. Like I can't thank you enough. I'm not standing on the shoulders of giants. So thank you.
My pleasure, my man. Good to see you.
Likewise.